everybody, Earl at thelogbook.com, back with more Voyages of Shelf Discovery. We're opening a Blu-ray set this time, and this always poses an interesting dilemma, because can I show you anything that's on this set? Probably not, but we can at least talk about the show. This is the 30th anniversary collector's edition of Space Precinct, Gerry Anderson's Space Precinct, on Blu-ray. This was offered directly by Anderson Entertainment late in 2024, shipped earlier this year, and it's pretty neat. The box itself is fairly substantial. It's got that sort of pearlescent foil printing on it. Very cool. Now, I know you're probably spotting the 12 symbol and thinking, oh, well, that's probably region 2. They wisely, I believe, did not region code these. In any case, I always ingest everything into my Plex server, and so it doesn't really matter what region it is, because the discs go back on the shelf, and then I just watch it off my media server. So, getting things unwrapped there. Again, very, very attractive packaging. I give them full marks on that one. And of course, on the bottom of the box, you have, I love this job. Great phrase from the show. Now, the set comes with a fantastic little book that collects not only some memorabilia and memories and some new material written to introduce you to the show. There's some original advertising. There's some original internal stuff, because their newspaper that you would see them read on set was actually the internal production bulletin. Also, the writer's guide is reprinted in full, and it's very interesting reading. The entire set is 8 discs in total, 8 Blu-ray discs. Everything you see there, every character gets to have their face on there, including some of the bad guys. And Slow-Mo. You gotta have Slow-Mo the robot on there. Very nice gatefold packaging on that set. Reprints of the Space Money that were created for the show. So you got 20 and you got a 50. You just have to go to another planet to spend it. Good luck with that. Again, those are very nicely done. And then we have a poster that is folded up. I did not realize quite how big this thing was going to be. It's big. And so I had to actually do a separate shoot once I had it folded out, because it took up the entire table that I normally shoot my videos at. And so it's the specifications of the flying space police cruiser that they use throughout the show. Appears in virtually every episode. Everything you could possibly want to know about that vehicle in excruciating detail, lovingly illustrated. That's just very nice. By the way, up here, this did not come with the Blu-rays. That is the 4-disc soundtrack from the much missed Network label. Got that in 2019, and so that is now, sadly, it's out of print, but it's not impossible to find. I do highly recommend it, because I liked the music from this show a lot, to say the least. One thing that the bonus features on the Blu-rays cover is they actually go into covering the merch, and it just so happens I have an almost complete set of the Space Precinct action figures. The show was out in 93 and 94 in the US, and so they were ready with all the merchandising opportunities. It's just the show didn't take off. I remember some of these were a gift from a friend who had scored a whole bunch of them on eBay. And there are others that I got in a lot, and I'm not sure about the eBay batch that I got, but the lot that I had already purchased sometime back that had 5 figures in it, that was something like $30. So sadly, as nice as the figures are, and I feel compelled to point out that each one does include the character's ID card, whether or not that character ever had an ID card. The ID cards were shown in the opening credits, and so it's kind of a nod to that. Do the bad guys have ID cards? Do you just whip out your red ID card and say, oh yeah, I'm one of the bad guys, but let me explain? That sounds about right. So these guys are normally back here on the wall, but I thought I would break them out for this occasion. Now, I remember seeing a screener for an episode of Space Precinct at the TV station where I was working in 1993 and 94, which was the Fox station that I talk about so much over on my other video series, which is Infinite Sheep. And I remember the VHS screener being handed to me kind of unceremoniously and saying, well, you might like this. This is a show we're not going to pick up. Okay. I remember finding the show kind of charming at the time. One phrase that comes up in the documentary on the Blu-rays, which, by the way, the documentary is 2 hours long, and it's brand new. It was shot just for this. And there's also a brand new mini-sode centering around slow-mo that's new to the Blu-ray. I remember the phrase that came up in the documentary and in the booklet, by the way, is that Space Precinct was too grown up to be a kid's show, but too childlike to really fit into the late night slots that so many stations put it in syndication. I think it's a very, very fair assessment of what happened with this show, and this may be the first time you have ever heard of this show that was out 30 years ago, because, like in my market, no one carried it around here. I was handed a screener with the upfront warning, we are not showing this. I will show you this one little bit. This is one of the bonus features. This is a screen test for the creature makeup. And a thought occurred to me in hindsight, watching some of this stuff, of what Space Precinct's place is in the history of sci-fi television, especially for the 90s. And looking at this, because they had, you can see the joins here, because this was a screen test, I don't think they were really trying to make it look seamless. Obviously, you have an actor wearing a makeup appliance on the chin, but then everything up there is a helmet that I'm sure they could barely see out of, with radio-controlled eyes and other things to make the creature look alive. And that was really a signature thing for this show. It was not something that many other TV shows did to this degree. I remember seeing a behind-the-scenes thing for the pilot of Babylon 5, and they were talking about having animatronic, remote control animatronic elements on some of their alien creatures. I don't recall that carrying over very far into the series at all. I think once you had Nagrath come and go in season 1, the big insect dude on Babylon 5, they were done doing animatronic stuff. But this show bet the farm on it. And that's really kind of where I think Space Precinct fits in the history of the medium, is that it is the last gasp of craft before everyone just threw in their lot with everyone else and said, you know what, we'll fix this in post, we'll do it as CGI. Space Precinct didn't do that. They did as much of it in camera as possible. Now, one caveat I will give you about the Blu-ray set, and you have to read the book to find this out. They did not find the original film footage and upscale that, which is unfortunate, because that makes for the best Blu-rays. Even 35mm film that TV shows were shot on in the 70s will upscale cleanly to HD, actually better than HD. For this, they used the Video Masters and did the best AI upscaling that they could to bring them up to HD. Now, the good news is, it's about the best AI upscaling I have ever seen, and it looks... If they found the original film, I'm not sure the difference would be huge between what they wound up here with upscaling and if they rescan the original film. That being said, if they found the original film and then said, hey, you know what, we're doing a separate Blu-ray of that, I would be strongly tempted, because this show had a unique look and it had a unique feel, and it just feels like the last time anyone attempted anything like this for television. Because after this, it was, if we're going to do alien creatures, it's either going to be, you're going to completely bake this actor into a full head appliance, or it's going to be a CGI creation, which became much more part of the lexicon of TV effects work once you got into Hercules and Xena, and they were doing things like centaurs, which now look kind of hilariously locked off, but at the time it was groundbreaking. I am not one of these people who's like, whoa, CGI, I don't want to see any CGI, they shouldn't be using it. I'm not saying that at all. Use CGI for what it's best at. But also, respect the shows that actually kept craft around for as long as they could. This was the last live-action Gerry Anderson show, and I'm very fond of it, and I am really glad it's out on Blu-ray. Highly recommend this. It's still available from Anderson.